Hello and welcome to our new Hybridities session on young Chinese designers. The theme behind this session is the idea that we all are already hybrid beings in everything that we do. We live in many different countries. We're operating somewhere between the physical and the digital, and in many ways our lives are hybrid in all sorts of fashions. The idea of hybridity as a theoretical concept has been promoted by Homi Bhabha. Homi Bhabha is an Indian social theorist who teaches at Harvard. He is himself a hybrid entity, he is a Parsi, one of the Persian community from within India, and of course he's now teaching in Boston. We ourselves, of course, each one of us now are very hybrid in our existence. I was brought up myself in Hong Kong, where many of these young designers today have been teaching or are still teaching. In those days, of course, Hong Kong was very different. We used to live in Fanling on the train ride to the border with China, and at those days, this was in the 1960s when I was between the ages of about 1 and 3 or so. In those days, you'd look across the border and there would be nothing but farmland and villages and so on. Of course, now it's Shenzhen, one of the most advanced cities in the world, a center of technology and many other things. But I was brought up with that. And to my mind, whenever I smell or hear Hong Kong, the smells of Hong Kong, I feel myself at home. So I was brought up in a way in a different country, and now I'm teaching in the States and everywhere. And I'm in many ways very similar to some of the presenters today, who themselves come from China, studied in other countries, in some cases are back in China or indeed are teaching in other countries as well. Today then is a kind of celebration of this extraordinary industry in many ways that's been going on for the last 20 years, where we've had thousands of very talented Chinese designers coming to the West, coming to other countries in the world outside China and studying, and then going back to China, or indeed same part in China, going back to China and developing a sort of form of hybrid practice itself, somewhere between kind of teaching and practice itself, and something new has arisen out of this. For these last 20 years or so, of course, institutions outside China have benefited from the influx of these astonishingly talented students, but we seldom have we had a chance to think about, well, what happens when they go back home and what emerges out of that? What kind of production emerges out of this kind of hybrid existence, and what kind of things are appearing that are radically new? So today is a real chance to get a glimpse of that talent, to see what is happening and what is being produced. I like to think today as something of a kind of a Chinese firecracker, lots of action, lots of images and so on. We've actually got more presenters than we would normally have, but the idea behind that is to really showcase the visual material, the astonishing productions that are coming out today from these young Chinese designers. This is part of, in some ways, of shifting and changing the format of what we're doing in these Digital Future sessions. Last week, of course, we had the first of our sessions, our tutorials on Rhino, and we will continue with those over the weeks, and they proved to be extremely successful. So today we're going to shake things up too and have a session that is really has more content, more visuals than normally, and to see what is happening. I'm delighted to be able to welcome these astonishingly talented individuals today. I'm going to hand over to Haotian, who will be introducing them, and then I will come and join you all for the questions at the end. So welcome to Digital Futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, for the generous introduction and the initiation of today's event. My name is Haotian Zhang. I'm an assistant lecturer at the University of Hong Kong, Department of Architecture, and I'm honored to be introducing my colleagues today and moderate the talk in a way, and then also share my work as one of the presenters of today's conversation. Today, we're joined by a few emerging voices in art and architecture. We're tied together by our shared interest in technology, new media, and the common educational background in architecture, which curiously is no longer the most important label for some of us. To quote my friend, who is also one of the presenters today, Yuting's word on this, there is a set of common principles shared between works of this group of creators. As a basic framework of design, research, and development, some creators choose mixed realities over singular construct, interactive over static, flatness over hierarchy, distributed over centrality, and technology-driven over technology determinism. Besides that, having grown up in China, we also share the similar past experiences, as Leo mentioned, experiences of moving back and forth between East and West, geographically, academically, and career-wise. After going through the common trajectory from China to abroad, each of us embarked on a different migration, a migration across continents, communities, and disciplines. Neil proposed this term hybridity to capture the difficulty of drawing a simple conclusion of who we do and who we are, and that is indeed the common status of all of us. And I believe the presenters here today are also representative of a larger group, and I wonder by the end of today's talk, are we able to draw a clearer portrait of that larger community? And also another thing to note is that this is a relatively young group. Young not in terms of age only, but regarding the fact that many of us just started to project our impact academically and professionally. Well, if we take the conventional or the stereotypical passage of an architect as an example, an architect can claim himself to be mature at the first built museum, probably at their age of 50. Then if that's the case, then most of us are still struggling to find our very first house commission. Or if you take the common measure of one's graduation, then some graduated from their last education 1 or a few years ago, some just came back to school again, and some might even start another education in the future. But such situations of being quote unquote inexperienced or always studying lend us the capacity and passion to evolve, explore, and absorb. And this could best be exemplified by the avid experiments, especially visual experiments, that the audience will see in a minute. So today here, there will be 11 presenters and 9 presentations, followed by a roundtable discussion among the presenters and also the guests here today. That is to say, every presentation is around 6 to 7 minutes long, and we're going to bombard the audience with drawings, images, and videos. It'll be a show reel of our works that stimulate your eyes as much as your intellect. Although sharing a common emphasis on technology and digital media, certainly each one of us has quite a unique focus. And the 9 presentations will take place in 3 groups based on my own understanding of our commonalities and differences. The first group, in my observation, still holds a faith towards architecture and takes technology as a means to critically reshape and rethink architecture or its discourse. The second group is taking digital media to create the most provocative visual images possible and use that to expand our imagination. The visual works seem to be the work in and of itself, not necessarily a representation of a potential built environment. And the third group goes even further. They blend reality and virtuality. For me, they seem to be ready to revolt against the material world and build a micro-universe which we all should escape into. These are, of course, my own personal, false classification, and you're very welcome to dispute my points. But without further ado, let me introduce the first group of presenters. Kaiho Yu is an assistant professor of architecture at the University of Applied Arts, Vienna. Previously, he taught at UCLA and SCI Arc, where he also received his master's degree. His research and practice focus on the realm of new media, simulation, and robotic technologies. Among many honors and exhibitions, his work has been exhibited in 5 city Biennale of Urbanism and Architecture, Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts, Chicago Architecture Biennale, and Studio X Beijing. Shi Ji is a registered architect. His recent design practice focuses on developing architectural robots. Ji holds an M Arc from Princeton and a B Arc from Tongji University, and he was awarded the 2017 Emerging Curators Project of Power Station of Art in Shanghai. His work has been exhibited internationally and published in renowned journals and conferences. He teaches studios and workshops and has practiced in both China and the US. Haotian, Zhang, and Tianying Li are assistant lecturers at the University of Hong Kong. They both received their master's degrees of architecture from the Cooper Union after finishing their previous educations in Tsinghua University, Beijing, China. Their teaching and research revolve around the surrealistic digital representation and material culture in the age of mass production. Their work has been exhibited at Carnegie Museum of Art, National Building Museum in the United States, and Beijing Design Week, among many other venues. And before we really start the conversation and presentations, I want to say that this is a collective effort and it cannot be achieved without the contribution of each one of us. So thank you guys. And then I will pass on the microphone to Kaiho, and Kaiho, kick off the presentation and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is my voice clear?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll go ahead to share the screen. Thank you, Haotian, for the introduction, and also thank you, Neil and DigitalFUTURES, for organizing this event. I'm very looking forward. And when I was preparing for the slides today, I was thinking about, since I'm the first one to kind of present, I was thinking about how can I engage a more diverse conversation by just simply throwing out a piece of brick. So in my case, I'm going to talk about something with architecture, with robots, and then focus on representation. I'm going to show you 3 projects I did, all engaged with a precedent of architecture. So in here, what you see is Jim Sterling's project, Bibliothèque de France, where he joined the competition in 1991. And here you see the model. The idea for us to think about this project is to try to engage with the play or engage with the multi-object relationship between those different pieces. Think about how nowadays, as we're living with machine, we're living with robots, how we can see this from the lens of robots, or how we can think about the relationship of multiple architectural objects or architectural volumes by just putting them or attaching them on robot arms. It might sound very abstract, but the first thing I want to show is to use an abstract way of simplifying or just taking the essential information of a piece. So what you see in here, they are stoply robots, where we had SCI Arc, we had like 5 different stoply robots. And by simplifying an architectural volume, we were able to implement a specific motion or specific, placement or rotation within those objects. And then we can place them together. So in this video, what you are looking at is the setup we did to engage this kind of project for a relationship of multiple architectural volumes. As you can see, the volumes are being attached to robots, but still working in a limited constraint, where you see how one single object can be seen in a lens of robots or a lens of fixed setup. And then you can start to engage with more objects, all from Jim Sterling's library, and try to put them together to create a new composition, which we call as a quasi-autonomous way of thinking about those pieces. And then they can start to engage with each other, where we see different velocities, different placements, and different colors and graphics, reflections start to work with each other. And then starting from here, a new way to think about a pre-existed volume can be brought up to the conversation. So The second project is to continue this way of trying to engage the system of robotics into the design process or into a conceptual way of looking at architectural pieces. In this case, we're looking at Corbusier's Unité de Habitation Immeuble. What we look at is more specifically on the rooftop pieces, since in this project, he was trying to kind of promote this kind of sports, healthy way of living together. So by extracting the rooftop pieces, we scale them down into a 1 to 100 scale model, and then we place them on one of the robot arm, as you can see in here. So in this image, what you're looking at is the interface we operate, where we see both the degree of joints, the delay of robots, and then how those 5 pieces of robots are working together. So one of them is holding the model, and then the other robots, they are either holding the camera or holding the lights. So the entire setup is to try to duplicate a digital environment where we see in rendering, but try to celebrate the limitation we have in the physical space. And then by creating a sense of graphic to project on the model pieces. So the image you've seen here is actually an image that we stitched of 300 different images. So if you can start to imagine that we have the projection light and the camera both moving in the same speed, and then we take sequential pictures. So that's, at the end, we see this amazing elevation where we can never see from our own eyes because of the perspectival distortion, and also because of the duration of the projection. And that's how we call this way of working to engage with robots. And where we have a certain degree of both precision as well as freedom in terms of the diverse operation. So the projection allows us to read the architectural pieces in different ways. And then through the post-process and the animation, we are able to really understand how this kind of machine vision can help us to rethink about certain architectural pieces, architectural operations, and also the organization of different parts in the project. And then the last project I want to show is to try to engage with a similar method, but to work on a very different subject, and both in terms of the president and also the architectural subject. So we are looking at Kazuo Shinohara, as you might know, a famous Japanese architect, and try to engage his pieces by really like separate them into different parts and bring them together in a sense of animated logic, as you can see in here, where we also look at Jeff Koons, how he was trying to engage 3 objects, and also Paul Chen, and also the Three's Company movie, to think about the relationship of not just multiple pieces, but also multiple buildings. So in this animation, you see a boy on the street of Japan in Tokyo, and he's going to a lottery machine and try to get some architectural pieces out. And then they have their own similarities, but also their own autonomous. And then we start to celebrate how amazing those pieces are. And then they start to engage a dialogue to each other. in order to have its own characters. And then these three pieces start to talk to each other in a very condensed urban environment where they are situated on the boundary of Shibuya and Shinjuku. So they have the logic from the previous two projects, the constraint of robots, and also the graphic identity, where we use to operate those architectural pieces to abstract them in order to activate them in a different way. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Well, Kaiho, thanks for sharing. That's amazing, and I really enjoy your work. I'll take it from here. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen? Well, first of all, my name is Lee. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you everyone for joining the session. And I'll try to finish in 6 minutes since we have so many presenters. I think the first thing I've been really interested in sharing for many years is the concept of architectural robot. And I always have the fantasy of the whole building working as a giant robot. I think one project in this category is my thesis at Princeton. So basically, it's a section of a column that has inflatable parts. So it somehow it's able to react to external load in real time. And there was a trend in 2016 when I started this project. I feel like there were a bunch of people in architecture school working on soft materials like silicon or plastics. So that's also part of the background information on this project. So I've been testing with small-scale soft robotic models, and after many iterations, I was trying to build the full-scale thing. So I'm always interested in the process of prototyping, and I also have a strong belief in it. So in addition to the actual thing, the column, there are many things that are also very important to me. For example, the interface, the valves, the circuits, the tubing, the manifolds, and most important, the whole presentation of all of it. So basically, the format of my thesis presentation is basically to show everything in a curatorial setup. And I think one of my arguments is that I really have a strong belief in the prototyping model. And I believe that's part of the job of an architect. So that's why I'd rather show everything to the visitors. And it's interesting, it seems after these years, I mean, the project was started in 2016. And after these years, when I talk about the project, it seems the process of making things has become more and more important. And it's so important to me that I even did an exhibition just about it. So the exhibition was named The Leftovers, and is literally about whatever details I designed during the process that haven't been displayed. And I really enjoyed how it turned out eventually. But anyways, I think this pretty much summarizes the flow of this project through the years. And I think it's for sure one of the most important projects so far that shows my work. Well, the second project has sort of a different approach. And I don't think we have much time for every detail, but basically it's a canopy addition to a building that makes the whole system a thermal machine. So it sort of creates a natural ventilation that pushes the air through filters. So the air quality will be improved somehow. But anyways, I think the major takeaway here is that this project is based on research, and I think it's another solid way to interpret the concept of architectural robot. Another interesting story is that the project was initiated in 2016 as a mitigation to the air pollution problems in China. But somehow it makes more sense right now in the middle of this pandemic. Another thing I'd like to share very quick is that is an exhibition that I curated in 2017. It's called Hashtag. And the major thing we did is an installation that works as a metaphor for the connectivity of the internet. So basically, those reconfigurable walls represent the hashtags, and people can just move things around just like how they label each piece of information online. And I think in the world we're living in, everything is pretty much about labeling, numbering, indexing, archiving. So I think this project is it's a good reflection on what we have been doing every day. Well, just in case you are still wondering what I've been doing recently, I have been focusing very much on more practical stuff in the past few years. I think I still have a strong interest in what I presented previously, but it's kind of like I'm also working on unpacking those concepts from another perspective. And as you can tell from my work, I really like objects. I like ready-made. I like playfulness. I like industrial vibe. So I think there is an underlying consistency in my work. Well, if you're still interested in checking out more of my work, I have a personal website, and you can always find me on Instagram. And I think that's pretty much all of it I want to present today. So basically, it's not exactly a thematic talk, but rather a very fast way looking into my work. And I really appreciate everyone's time. I hope I didn't disappoint anyone. And feel free to let me know if you have any questions. And thanks again. My name is G. Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to the next presenter.
Thank you, Shizi. I do have a question. Like, how many eyes are there in your website? That was 6 eyes, and then 6eyes.com.
There are 6 eyes. Yeah, 6 of them.
Cool.
I think others are also registered, so that's the only thing I can do. I'll stop sharing. Hold on.
All right, thank you. And then it comes to me and my partner, Tianying Li. We're currently teaching undergrad studios and the digital representation at the University of Hong Kong. The works we share today are some recent explorations around point clouds. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yep. So hi guys, I'm Tianying Li. Today within only like 5 to 6 minutes, we're going to go through a lot of images and short videos. But first, let us briefly introduce ourselves. In our art and architectural practice, we're interested in a couple of things. We do material experiments, particularly of plastics and industrialized material with an elusive origin. And we are very fond of its pliability, texture, and color, and also the playful interaction between our body and the material. We also do photo collages, a special type of collage, taking each photo as a pixel to form the final image. So these are the final images. All of these are created not with just several photos, but actually with over 1,000 individual pictures. We also do renderings and try to use images to create an immersive visual narrative. And just like others, we make buildings and we design buildings. But perhaps, again, with an emphasis on representation. And these days, we're also building with our students. But the journey today is about a very specific focus, which is point clouds. We did our first 3D scan using photogrammetry around 3 years ago. And we couldn't expect that actually this apple ever since actually accompanied us in the journey of searching for the medium specificity of point clouds.
Thank you. So what we did was a bunch of prototypes to test ways to represent point clouds to understand its quote unquote materiality. So first we mapped the pixels onto paper and wrapped it around a chair. And you see on the lower left corner, the original apple is now duplicated as a low polygon paper apple, and it is just slightly bigger. So inspired by this low poly simulacra, we thought maybe we could turn the point cloud into some simple meshes and run it in 3D simulation and try to give it a different physical quality. So what if the apple is not solid, but instead it's inflated and start to bounce around? Or what if it is even softer and becomes floppy? We are exploring the uncanny different discrepancies between the apple's realistic texture and its weird physical performances. After having fun with mesh, we try to play with the cloud itself. The experiments here is to remap the points in the 3D space. In other words, we're not sculpting the apple, but distorting the space. And as the apple is moving in the distorted space, its projection or its map also changes in shape and texture. What we arrive at is this apple unrolling itself, refracted and reflected three-dimensionally, following a mathematically rigorous manner. And then we just wrote more mathematical functions, defining more field conditions, but still moving the same apple around. And then we had more. We simply want to see how many more mesmerizing GIFs can we actually create. So one heritage we got from the parametric age was this mesmerizing effect of those optimization animations. But here, without a very clear goal of optimizing anything, right? We simply appreciate the fact that it is always changing and looping. And as we create more prototypes, we also interrogate the same issue in a disciplinary view. What point cloud challenges is the idea of abstraction, a concept that is so essential to architecture. Conventionally, the complex reality is translated into simplified and precise geometric definition, and the further design operations take place on top of that abstraction. But with point cloud, a compilation of millions of points, how can we then alter it without reducing it to architectural line drawings again? In other words, what is point cloud's medium specificity? What is the supposed operation that best exploits its qualities?
And here we actually explored the different ways of mapping pixelated data onto 2D canvas. And they lead to different materialities of image, embodying different aesthetic experiences and shaping different perceptions of the same reality. So basically what you're looking at is a compilation of screenshots of Google satellite images of Manhattan. And the word materiality can take place in a rather literal way through operation on the level of texture, glossiness, or transparencies, and other material attributes. Can we create a surreal condition that challenges our imagination of reality? My answer, or our answer here, would be, of course. Materiality can be about taking a physical object and seeking for a new expression of it using different physical material. So it can be primarily in a physical realm. Materiality can also happen on the scale of time. Many of the objects in space we created were not really three-dimensional, but actually 4D. So, and their evolving qualities through time add up to their own fathomable depth. This object, for example, is a 3D scanned mapped onto a revolving 4D cube. And it can be forever developing as time goes on. The aesthetic experience of looking at these images is very different from that of reading an architectural drawings, like line drawings, whatever drawings. What we are evoking here is not reading, but actually feeling. the word like some architects may hate the most. And this is where we are at right now. To end here, we experiment with point cloud, explore and embrace its complexity. Without abstraction, actually, we altered the materiality. And hopefully that could inspire some of the new ways of designing, both in digital and in the physical world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing here. Having finished our presentation also means that we're moving on to the second group of presentations. 3 presentations, 4 presenters. The first one is Jiacheng Cheng. She has an architectural background in sociology. She has an educational background in sociology, architecture, and fiction and entertainment. She explores interdisciplinary territories across film, motion design, user experience design, VR, AR, advertising, products, architecture, and space. Cheng is currently working in Alibaba as a creative designer. The second presentation is conducted by a pair of artists. Liu Xin is a designer and a director. He works on various mediums such as architecture, multimedia, installations, motion graphics, mixed realities, and 3D scans. His previous collaborators include Burberry, Polestar Cars, Wallpaper Magazine, Nylon, Wood World Club, London Fashion Week, Bosi, Victor Ma, Ma Guoqian, Christie, Li Yuchun, SCI Arc, Robot Lab, etc. He recently co-created the forum New Digital Design and has won the CG Architect 3 Awards 2020, among other honors and exhibitions. Zhu Yuting is an architect, 3D artist, installation designer, and sound designer. She experiments with emerging digital technologies and combines multiple media, blurring boundary between the digital and the physical through spatial intervention, volumetric video, artificial intelligence, and immersive experiences. She has collaborated with fashion brands including Burberry, London, and Bosi. Her work has been exhibited in Shanghai, New York City, LA, San Francisco, among other venues. And then the third presenter, Chenjia Ren, is a visionary architectural designer focusing on the representation and storytelling of space. Before pursuing her master's degree at SCI Arc, she received her bachelor's degrees from both Xi'an Jiacheng Liverpool University and the University of Liverpool. Her work has been exhibited in Suzhou, Shanghai, and Venice. All right. And then let's welcome Jiacheng. Whenever you're ready, you can share the screen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cheng. Hope my sound is clear. If you guys can hear me, I'm going to just share my screen. Wait a second. So this is a trailer from my short film when I was in SCI Arc. So today I'm showing my school project at SCI Arc, a short film I directed and the concept of which comes from the Chinese Qing Dynasty drama, TV drama, and the game called Love and Producer, 恋与制作人, which may not be popular right now, but it was popular several years ago because the film is directed in 2018. The film is about a housewife fell in love with an AI Qing Dynasty emperor in the game while her husband is on business trip. She keeps spending money in the game to unlock more gifts given by the emperor. So in the end, she finally reaches the queen level and the hologram emperor comes into her home. So basically the story, the film shows more about the relationship between she and her husband and she and the game emperor. So the husband is keep blowing up, sorry, I haven't spoken English for a while. So the husband just doesn't treat her that well, while the emperor keeps giving her treats. So in this project, I'm trying to use the architectural design thinking into the way of storytelling, world building, and the scene design. Since I'm a person who don't like to read or write, and I like to make easy things, I don't like to make easy things go complicated. So the story is kind of not that abstract. I want to make it easy to understand. I want to make it people to laugh and meanwhile maybe bring some thinking to the audience. And I'm also interested in the live shooting and CG, so it's a really good experience for me to know the workflow and also how to enhance some visual presentation compared to my previous architecture study. So right now I'm working as a creative designer in Alibaba, and I really think that my architecture study experience and all these project experience can combine with the entertainment industry and bring some new blood, yeah, to the entertainment industry. Yeah, that's it. Let's just wait till this thing finish. Oh, done. Okay. My presentation is done. Yeah. And next one's Yuting and Yuting, right?
Yeah, so we'll share the screen. Hello everyone. Thanks for your invitation. We are Liu Xing and Zhu Yuting. We are a designer and director duo. In today's presentation, we'll share a few projects to show how different tools and techniques can be combined with different medias for both academia and commercial worlds. I'm Shane, and I design spaces and objects for both physical and virtual worlds. And I direct motion, performance, and experiences with time-based media.
Hi everyone, I'm Yuting. I believe that the special quarantine experience in the past year has made us more deeply aware of our desire to return to the real world, to communicate with each other, and the importance of necessity of the virtual world. So our work focuses on creating a complete worldview, which include full sensory, immersive commercial and cultural experience that blurs the boundary between physical and digital, real and virtual world. So today we will show 3 of our projects. The first one called Digital Supermarket Worlds, and it explores the possibilities of interactive architecture form at the age of post-digital and changes the legibility and representation of everyday objects. You will see different objects, characters, and spaces are interacting with each other. So let's watch the film at first.
I can't find the player. Okay, got it. Sorry for the Chinese subtitle and audio. So far we only did this version.
我们的第一站是小卖部，这里 里有草莓冷萃、香蕉慕斯和椰树椰汁。所有的饮料都配有动画包装。薯片喷泉从膨化食品柜中喷涌而出。您的购物车正在尝试接收尽可能多的薯片，看起来它并没有抓住的多，但没关系。超级印刷机生产的动态图像传单到处飞扬，散落各处。向南前往第2站，草莓农场。当每天的太阳角度变化导致阴影移动时，建筑上阳光照射到的位置会露出卡通草莓图案。屋顶上的草坪时不时地张开或者合上。农场的外侧是由人工编织的网格状地面，草莓随着地面上凸起的柔软模块而移动。屋顶上的大草莓流淌下来变成了草莓酱，草莓酱也成为了流动的草莓。构成农场建筑的柱子上有一些红色的标语。您只有从特定角度才能看到完整文字。您好，这里是第3站，智能仓库。您在超市里看到的一切都在这里集中整理、储存、转运。我们的智能3维电梯可以沿着任意方向自由移动。货架和集装箱不断优化尺寸，以适应不同产品的大小。柔软的人造物碎片悬浮在空间网络中。第4站，西瓜商店，请注意安全。第1回合，请注意，重力转向了左边。第2回合。请注意，检测到来自多个方向的分流。第3回合，请注意，失重。干得不错，恭喜你！请到咖啡厅休息，这里是最后一站，请尽情享受。这是艺术家从水蒸气得到灵感而创作的动态装置。广场上，勺子、叉子、杯子翩翩起舞。杯子缓缓地走进了一座建筑，建筑的表面打开了一个空间。在这里，空间和桌子都会随着顾客的行走而移动、变化。顾客可以在享用餐食的同时自由移动，感受多样的风光。旅程到此结束，奇异超市欢迎您的再次光临。
Yeah, I'll quickly move to the next one. So the second one is a music video called Runway 2.0. In this one, we translated the barbarous monogram, which is the pattern of the main character's clothes, into a summer poolside party with virtual dancers to create a vibrant monogram world.
Then we got you diving in the pool.
It's always been part of the equation. We be amazing on daily basis now instead of occasions. 遗憾了马鞭那感觉从人加在一起有上百年的历史。我出门上大街更注重仪式感，衬托出有病的气势。
She done made it smooth. Then we got you diving in the pool. Brother, roll it down. Then we got you diving in the pool.
勇气还不够给我别忘忧，我的青春吸引你的目光。夏日的派对是我的主场，黑夜或白昼我发散光芒。
Hey, where you at? Won't you come through this pool party and run?
年代会他们做后来的事，还没这发什么后来的剧，爱上 my face。Pull them up outside right up to my knees, so right in that mix. Sweet like a kitty, but teeth like a tail. Hitting the lick, hitting the drills, make them go feel.
Then we got you diving in the pool. Brother, roll it down. Then we got you diving in the pool.
勇气还不够给我别忘忧，我的青春吸引你的目光。夏日的派对是我的主场，黑夜或白昼我发散光芒。
I just drop my cell phone in the pool. Have my gas on my waist, acting like a fool. 第二条线用着你别两手有祝福，跟所有兄弟姐妹一起不再孤独。
勇气还不够给我别忘忧，我的青春吸引你的目光。夏日的派对是我的主场，黑夜或白昼我发散光芒。
And quickly, we'll go to the last one. The Era of Bossy. It's a short film directed by Angie Su and art directed by me and designed by Yuting for Bossy. In this film, the main character travels through multiple surrealist parallel worlds. Let's quickly dive in. It's a
where the boundaries of gender vanished. Eventually.
right, so if you want to check more work, please go to the Play.Work. And thank you.
Thanks, Yuting and Liu Xing for sharing the amazing work. I truly enjoy it. Now I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, I'm Chenjia Ren, and have been interested in the digital representations and the narrative. I'm trying to explore the boundary between the cinematic and architecture. Today, I will share 3 of my schoolworks from SCI Arc. The first one is a project I played with the possibility of a phone narrative. So it's from the how one singular phone can be generated, scrolling from the edge of the furniture and composed into a shape, and the shape can be condensed into interior space, and the interior can be reversed, become an architectural envelope. And the second project is more a musical educational space. In this project, I merged more narrative into the composing of the design. For example, I combine the narrative of the worshiping nature through the music as a resilient echoes towards the mechanizations. This is a next scene of the project, and you can see the plants are growing inside the architecture. Besides designing the architecture itself, I was trying to create the ecology and the social environment which embed the project. The last project I'm gonna show is more cinematic, as I was trying to convey my ideas through the establishment of a whole narrative, building a series of scenarios instead of one singular architecture. Tunes and some surreal items indicate the changing of the scenes, while the creatures is what I use to guiding the users to explore the scenes deeper. So the short film is a simulation of one seeking freedom and peace in his own mind under the pandemic situation. The movie takes on the first person's view of a game engine, trying to engage the audience as if they are exploring the world themselves. The orange-red atmosphere at the beginning of the animation represents how the present conditions can bring about aggressive emotions. So if the black work at the beginning and the other city elements represent the reality of the aggressive, the touches of the nature and the surreal elements is what I use to reveal the subconscious of people and their inner peace. So the changing state and the evolving dominant relationship between the two forces actually evolves through the narrative as a way to show the process of the peace founding of the main character. So the main character will lead the audience to explore different scenarios through his walking, and leading by the kind of spiritual creatures. So as an indication of the directions where he's going. So the deeper he's exploring his mind, the more nature is actually invaded into the scene. So kind of getting away from the city background. So And I leave the open ending into the film about the question of the peace and the inner mind. Yeah, that's all for my sharing. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you guys for the astounding visual works. Then allow me to introduce the last group of presenters. Again, there will be 3 presentations. The first one is going to be conducted by Yuehua Wang. She's a multidisciplinary architectural designer, curator, and game designer. Her projects discuss virtual and immersive experience both in physical and digital realm, challenging the boundary between the physical and the virtual through experimenting in various media. She's currently a diploma student at the Architectural Association. Following that, Peng is the co-founder of MR2 Meta, an independent game producer, game space architect, VR artist, and curator. He holds a Master of Architecture from the University of Hong Kong after his education at Kunming University of Science and Technology. He is currently a game architect in Shanghai. His work has been exhibited at Hong Kong PMQ, Shanghai N50, Shanghai Yishan Museum, etc. In his multidisciplinary approaches, he practices spatial design in the virtual world. And he's also, this is very notable, he's also a former semi-professional esports player. All right. Then the last presenter is Xiying Bao, sorry. She's a visual artist. She explores wearable VR as well as other visual experiments. She is currently pursuing her master's degree in design studies at Harvard GSD. Welcome.
Thank you, Haotian. Thanks for a generous introduction. So I'll just start to share my screen without further ado. Good evening, guys. My name is Eva. Thank you, Neil and the Digital Future for inviting me. I'll start with a very short presentation to what I have been doing basically in the past year. Right, I guess we would all agree that the world we're living in is now fully blended with virtual content. Inhabiting the immersive internet where icons and interfaces became the facade of the virtual space. Information explosively displayed on our screen with no hierarchy and transparency. This first project is a really fun project to start with. It's a series of study on a 3-dimensionalized web interface with comparing studies on the interface and other parameters in terms of data harvesting, engagement, security, anonymity, formality, and user autonomy, delivers a video report on current platforms in the immersive internet. Sorry, the video has no sound for copyright. I guess using the format of video is kind of to address questions on all these parameters, which I will be discussing a bit on in other projects of today's session. Let's talk about the access to the immersive internet, where the portal is the threshold to any virtual space. A hyperlinked gate, invisible. A portal can be as small as a pixel, as big as thousands of meshes. The physicality of the portal does not matter in terms of accessing to a platform. However, the design of a portal in the immersive internet has to be addressed. The project is an exploration of a virtual portal where the data of visit numbers will be collected in tangible form and in the end forming another portal. The short study on the portal and accessing to the internet have also arised questions on safety and materiality in the immersive internet. Has architecture lost its validation in the virtual world? Is materiality in the immersive internet just a simulation? With architecture, lost its original role of protection. When safety is only built on a protocol, enclosure is built by meshes and pixels. With architecture, lost its role of protecting us in the physical form. So the third project I will be discussing on the materiality in the virtual architecture. As Gottfried Semper in Four Elements of Architecture believes that the fundamental building material was nonetheless a form of weaving. Taking the metaphor of weaving as a collective effort and togetherness, building a symbolic safe space and celebrating of virtual togetherness. In this project, I'm discussing how symbolic materiality and metaphor can be investigated in the materiality of virtual spaces. I have designed a series virtual garments as a tool to constructing identification and digital persona, drawing personified relation between the symbolic meaning of the virtual material and virtual garments. Metaphor is a tool to construct the symbolic and psychological togetherness of the virtual space. Through the form of weaving, collectively create a safe fabric. Togetherness and symbolic collectivity is materialized in the fabric space that was made by the user and their community. A community space is collectively weaved by each other's selection of garments that reflects one's identity performance, joined by the synergetic relationship between one's virtual garment and the space, becoming a materialized togetherness of the community. Next is a speculative film that I was working on with virtual production as media. I'm sorry to say this, but this is a dystopian film about the underground music scene in Beijing in a speculative future. I used the real-time engine as a filming tool for the to construct narrative. By using first-person perspective to draw a scene in the speculative future in a cybernetic society of control and implicit structure. And then bring back to the underground music scene in the city. Okay. Next, I was also using game as a narrative medium to construct narrative. This was an exhibition in Beijing. Each artist are asked to deliver a piece of work within 24 hours. So this is the medium that I chose to use immediately with no hesitation. So I'll start with a quote by Roland Barthes. I often fall into the darkness of my own desires in dark, but sometimes there will be another kind of night. Right. I better not play because there's a sound. Anyway, let's just wrap up and I'll quickly go through the rest. This is a CGI manifesto discussing on the term of strangeness can be delivered through CG simulation and realism being a tool of promoting manifestation. And next was I'll just jump on our speculations. So I guess I will just conclude with this very early project that I did 4 years ago, where the digital was used as a social material to materialize the intangible value on the building facade, with layers of synchronized projection with asynchronized projection with synchronized reality blend fiction into reality. And I guess overall, my interest in digitality is still how it would unfold a potential of bringing civic value in architecture and blurring the boundary between virtual and the physical in an intangible way. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Eva, and I really love your work. I'm Hupa, and just as Haotian introduced, I'm a virtual architect, and right now I'm working in a game company in Shanghai. The plan for me to share my work is that I will quickly introduce some work first and introduce several of them for more time. The first case I want to share is one of my main work and my master stage thesis work. This work starts from humanistic care and explores the relationship between virtual space, VR, and human memory. It's also designed from space angle, explore the language of architecture space design in the virtual space. Like this one is the memory of a little boy once went to a factory with his father, and he told me that he felt the pig is so giant that he felt so scared. I collaborated with some neutral scientists to make this work through interviews with family memories of Alzheimer's disease. I used the memory elements mentioned in their interviews as a kind of memory trigger, that is a kind of memory key. And I'm modeling them and design the flow line in the recollected story, arrange them in this virtual space. And finally, I let the family members experience together through VR technology, and later I will share some videos of this experiment process. The second work I want to share is a game metaverse product that is still under development. So I can only share like some quickly picture of them. In fact, this product is a meta universe product developed for architect and artists. As a producer, I hope that we can put the game in this product and the quality of 3A game is introduced into this field of architecture. Is that I want to combine the 3A concept of game industry and into our architecture product, and we can introduce more architect into this kind of game space and to like share their design and experience design, no matter to the normal people and to like clients. So I hope I can introduce this experiment product more on the next occasion. You can see the atmosphere and quality of the entire space. I will introduce a bit more later. The third work I want to share is a VR drama, a drama space created based on the traditional Chinese ancient poems in collaboration with Wang Jing, a drama director from the University of Cambridge. In this space, I transformed the 2D pictures and arranged them in the space, VR space, just like the installation in the stage design. But through the game-based scenes design, the quality of the entire space surpassed the feeling through brought by 2D pictures. This work will also be in the future accepted in British and Chinese art galleries. And I will, maybe if I have a chance, I will introduce more. So this is like one picture from this product. The first work is a company headquarters designed on Mozilla Hub, and is also a practical work of virtual space architecture design, which finally achieved good results, but there are like some basic problems such as the network, such as the size of model and so on. And the fixed work is actually a hardware development based on VR hardware ecology. The core design concept is that the HTC Vive Lighthouse has an accuracy of less than 3 millimeters. Architects can develop some simple high precision tools based on this. Such tool can serve in the construction and daily production in the poor rural environment. My tutor, Dom Holhan from the University of Hong Kong, plans to use this tool to make good processing on site. in the like rural area in Fujian, China, instead of high cost production, such as factory and some laser cuttings. So now I will play some video to show the first work, the Alzheimer's memory theaters and the network scan. More. Sorry for the Chinese characters. So this is a memory cache, and the work is memory cache, and I want to like use VR technology to help Alzheimer family to build a virtual memory theaters to like combine and achieve the family relationship to like defend the disease of the Alzheimer. Yes, this is like a experiment process during the work. So yeah. So when the family members enter the photo of the memory, they can like go back to the memory before. This is the boy's old house with his grandfather who has already passed away, and the boy has haven't been to this room for over 10 years. So when I finished this work and I show the space to him, like he just cried because he just really missed the feelings of the memory. This is I as architect to use the space tool to help people like build a memory space to help them defend memory and defend the disease. Yes. So my work is not like a little bit not a visual things. It's more about like a product to help as an architect to help people to solve some like disease problem in this progress. So this is like the second memory. I just quickly show this. This is 360 pictures of the factory memory. So whose memory is from the father and the boy used to like share with his grandfather. This is just a quick show of this. And this is like also the quickly shortcut of the network game for architect in the which is still under development. I can only share like some of the dynamic space, dynamic weather sort of things. And you can see this kind of city is actually like the outside of the Earth. Maybe you can imagine this is on Mars, the future, the virtual Mars, and architect can share the unbuilt work in this network space and to have some like no matter commercial things or the experimental design. Sort of. Yeah. Basically, that's all for my work. So thank you. I will share the I'll pass on to the next.
Hi, I'm gonna share my screen. Hi guys, so nice to meet you here. I'm Xiying. I'm a tech-driven designer, SCI researcher, and digital artist. And currently, I'm a grad student in Harvard University, focusing on human-machine interaction. My background was service design in Royal College of Art and industrial design in Tongji University. My design and research field is mainly HCI, including AR, VR, wearable, sensory artifacts, and responsive environment. I also started to involve speculative, discursive, and post-human theory in my design. I consider myself starting from physical design, then shift to digital media, and now coming to a hybrid that work in the intersection of digital and physical. So the first work I'm going to share with you is Emo, an interactive installation that interact with human emotion through the facial expression.
the most fascinating moment of it was the observation of the emotional interactions as the participants were playing with their facial expression to see how the political landscape responds. So many expressed that it provided a new perspective on how we could rationally observe and perceive our emotions through human-machine interaction. And this depiction and reproduction of the emotions keep us away from our own subjective experiences and create a kind of imaginary rationality for our own feelings, aesthetic experience, and the moral practice to understand them. As a product designer, I like to think about how to reframe our relationship with the non-human aspects through all those kind of interactive sensory wearable artifacts. AR/VR is another field that I have been exploring. I see like augmented like AR/VR as one of an approach that integrate the physical and digital world. I always envision our future to be the entanglement of virtual and physical, and us as a human to be the combination of carbon and silicon. Yeah. And related to that, I did a lot of digital media experiments to speculate how real reality can be combined with virtual reality. I create the term post-reality to describe a potential future world that simulation and reality is entangled and they combined into one. Like how the mixed reality will extend our sensation and widen our perception of the other beings in the world and help us be more open, attentive, and responsible. Xi is a virtual fashion platform that I co-founded with my friends from UAL, and our vision is to take virtual fashion as a bridge between the metaverse and the fashion industry. And here's some example of our work. So by creating digital fashion design and virtual showroom, we envision the future fashion to include all gender, age, and race. So we have cooperated with several KOLs on Instagram and fashion designer, and we have over 1 billion page views already. Thank you. This is the end of my sharing.
Thank you so much, guys. And that also means it's the end of all of the presentations we have today. And we're moving on to the next session, which is a discussion. It is truly astounding for me, I guess, for all of you to learn and appreciate so many amazing works happening, everywhere in the world, especially during this COVID situation, where you sort of find that yourself is somehow trapped in a very local place, but in fact, there are a bunch of amazing things happening in the world. And thanks for today's event to bring us together. Also, as a matter of fact, the organization of this event was done in a rather decentralized way. So we each just set out to invite some friends to talk. Right. So before today's sharing, I don't think any of us know exactly what the others are doing. So it is indeed amazing. Thank you. We've been discussing how to get the conversation started. I have a bunch of questions, and I believe all of you have some questions. More question rose as the presentation went, but perhaps we should first hear from the guests instead of the presenters today. So I wonder if Philip, Neil, or Gustavo, if you guys have any comments or thoughts you want to share.
Yeah, can I jump in? I mean, first of all, thank you. This is an incredible presentation today. I mean, it made even a Chinese firecracker seem kind of normal. It was really great. I also obviously didn't know what was going to happen, but I had a sense that something special would emerge, and it really was terrific. And Philip and I have been communicating. This should be a book or an issue of a journal. Really, very, very special work, and you know, I'm amazed by it. But I had one sort of thought, because I think it was, I forget who the presenter was, but one of the, I think it was it Shin? I think one of the presenters was showing the son of Dean Ma, Ma Qingyong, who's now a pop star a rapper in China, and but Dean Ma kind of was interesting, because I came across to the States to work with Dean Ma, and it was because of Dean Ma that we set up the whole Digital Futures. It was we went to back in 2011. I went to Shanghai and collaborated with Philip, and the rest is history, as it were. But Dean Ma once made this kind of comment. He said, "Well, you know, the problem is that the Chinese students don't speak very good English, and the English students don't speak very good Chinese. So let's all speak in code." But actually, I mean, I think in some ways you were speaking in images in a really remarkable way. And it reminds me also of another comment that was made to me when I was teaching in Dessau, where we had an incredible mix of people from all different cultures. And one of the lectures was in German. And my colleague there, Alfred Jacobi, said, "Don't worry, the pictures are in English." You know, and I think what was so amazing today was that the images all spoke to us, whatever background we came from, and it really, really powerful. So anyway, I think something astonishing is emerging, and it's great to see, what has emerged, as it were, out of these kind of 20 years. I guess most of you guys have been more recently sort of studying in other countries, but to see what's come out, and it is something genuinely novel. I mean, it kind of actually reminded me in a strange way of what Hong Kong itself always already has been, in the sense this crazy mix of different things that would just be completely exotic, completely different to any other city in the world. And this now is somehow coming out, and it's obviously not, it's deterritorialized all over the place, but really hybrid sort of work. And one of the big questions I want to ask now is because you were presented in three kind of packages, those were kind of more properly architectural, and it gradually got to the point where we were almost in this kind of virtual world. But that's the world we're in anyway. I mean, right now, I'm teaching hybrid courses, kind of part physical, part virtual. We are in this kind of domain. So the question really is, do we use the term architecture anymore for this? In other words, is the term architecture obsolete? Or do we kind of recolonize, reinterpret the term architecture and celebrate it as the platform that can produce all these different hybrid visions? So maybe the question I wanted to ask of you is, do you think yourself as being architects? Or is the term obsolete, or is it an incredibly useful term that can expand beyond the physical into this new domain of experimentation that we saw today?
I totally believe that we hold different opinions. I mean, Sun hasn't even been an architect in the first place, right? As I was looking through some works by some of you. And I believe there are people who hold this opinion that we're still architects, and I believe I'm one of them. I don't know about you. Right?
Of course.
Perhaps not in such a conventional way, or perhaps in a way that is also embracing the challenges from new technologies. But in our own research and practice, the way we look at these new medium is still very architectural. We would look at stuff like, what we said as medium specificity. We'll try to look for the right way to deal with that, just like the way we analyze material like wood or mud, right? We analyze architectural drawing and we try to believe that there is a particular way of using that medium or material. And this is still the same, and this is still consistent in our research right now, except that the material and the tools, they are both digital, but essentially we tend to believe that there's nothing so different between the analog and the digital. And what we are doing is merely taking the new tools and absorbing that into a conventional way of understanding architecture. That's our position, if I may say that. Thanks. But what about others? Yeah, what about the others?
I think it's depending on the school. I mean, it's always been kind of experimental, and some schools are more experimental than others. I know that Eva was now at the AA, and that was always a slightly crazy place of experimentation, where the term architecture was always being renegotiated again and again. And it was kind of interesting because I was just communicating with Eva and saying, well, when I was teaching there, Akim Menges and Neri Oxman was there, and Neri Oxman has gone on to kind of take that notion of an architect in a different sort of way. And it strikes me that what maybe the term architect is really should be defined more by the kind of sets of skills that we get in architectural in training. In other words, the capacity to design, to think three-dimensionally, and to understand material behaviors, that are kind of skills that can be redeployed in other domains. I mean, I think that the term architect anyway has been taken over by computer science. If you Google the word architecture now, you're more likely to find people from computer science doing that. So I'm wondering whether we have to strategically renegotiate what we mean by architecture as a term and rethink what we're doing in schools of architecture to open up to this new domain, which is, as we've seen today, is fertile with possibilities and very rich for those coming. I mean, not only from an architectural background, but an architectural background really, I think, helps you in some ways to kind of be able to imagine these new hybrid spaces.
Maybe, Neil, this question should be posed to those who are not in architectural profession or discipline, right? As I noticed, some of you started from architectural background, but now you have moved into other industries, perhaps. I don't know, there are a lot of artists here, but Yuting or Liuxin or Eva, Hu Peng, you guys are the people I know who are moving away from the discipline. So I wonder what you think.
I mean, but maybe the question is to what extent did they benefit from that background in architecture to move into these new territories? Maybe that's an interesting kind of question.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello? I can share very interesting things about towards this question, because right now, actually, I study architect, definitely, but right now I'm in a very famous game company in China. And the very interesting thing is that my title from the company is architect. So actually, it's that is the moment when I want to accept this job. And then I found a very so many interesting things in the game company because my title is architect. So I want to let the game designer knows what the value of architectures we can bring into the game industry. But sometimes they just said, no, it's just a stupid game. You don't tell me that. We don't care about the buildings, the urban life sort of feeling. But I just try my best to let them know. Even if I'm designing the architect in the game for the AI, for the NPC, but I still want to do that in the game. Sometimes they accept me oh, the architect can really design some cool things in game. But sometimes they just said, just forget that. Just make a simple building for the game. That's it. So it's very interesting towards this question. Yeah.
Right. I guess. Sorry. Yeah, because I was working in the game firm over the summer, so I guess I have some common thoughts with Peng. But I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm escaping from architecture, but I'm I guess I'm still in this process of dematerialization of architecture. So to me, architecture is more like a medium, and vice versa. I mean, it's also like a medium that I kind of perceiving the space, perceiving the visuals. It's like the specialization that idea that I'm having. So I think the concept is it's kind of like the discipline is getting broader, but the concept of architecture still is there. But I mean, indeed, like I do agree that we're definitely challenging this
yes.
concept of architecture and the material side of architecture for sure.
I also have some view to share. I think I'm also not escaping from architecture neither, because when I was a kid, I started my interest in CGI. I remember when I first watched the film E.T. by Steven Spielberg. At that time, I knew that I'm going to do something to combine the magical things, the impossible things with the real world. And at that time, I wanted to be a visual effects artist. And then I learned the architecture as my major. And I think that my training in architecture doesn't mean I need to be an architect to design real buildings, because I need to deal with both the investors and the construction teams, and the design only exists a small portion of the whole process. So how to have more value of my design? I think my freelancing experience in the last few years in art and fashion industry let me think of new cultural production and design modes. I think in my design, the presence of architecture no longer requires the physical structure, but is expressed in the narrative of various mediums. In my view, the drawings, models, videos, texts, and the building itself are all specific to the medium, and they lack hierarchy or centrality. So far, most of my architectural design have been represented as animated short films, like what I showed before. For example, in the music video did for Victor Ma and Barbary, we translated that Barbary's monogram pattern into a summer pool architectural design. This design can actually be built in the real world, but we didn't and we couldn't. So we built it in the virtual world to let the virtual dancers and the Victor Ma to dance in this kind of film world. And it also has the potential to be built in the future if possible. And I believe with the development of the XR technology, we will definitely live in a ubiquitous hyper reality world. And at that time, the value of such like, let's see, crazy design or impossible design in the real world can be achieved for everyone. Yeah.
I'm just wanted to bring in the name of Joseph Kosinski. I don't know if you guys know this guy, but he was he trained in architecture at Columbia, and he was the director of Tron Legacy. And one of the interesting comments that he made about that, about his transition, is that that if I was an architect, I designed a private home, maybe 100 people get to see it, but you do design a building in Tron Legacy, and millions of people see it. So in some ways, it actually opens up a huge influence. The work that you're doing, Xin, I'm sure, I don't know what the audience has been watching this, but it really opens up a kind of totally new domain whereby you can really have an impact on the world.
And I think he proves I think he proves the benefits of learning architecture and moving to other industry, because if he's, I met a lot of friends who studied filmmaking or CGI and start, and I think there are more, their design are more about the screen space but not the set design and the design of spaces and objects in that fictional world. But if we see the film by Joseph, the Tron Legacy and Oblivion, the design has its true value in both films.
Just to kind
may
of
I propose that hear some voices from, let's say, the architectural gang, right? Just to instigate the whole group here, I want to divide the presenters into architectural GAN and non-architectural ones, right? People who believe that the opportunities are outside of the discipline, and people who start still quoting James Sterling, Kazuo Shinohara, and a bunch of very familiar names, and also showing buildings in their presentation. So I wonder if Kaiho and Shizi want to share something as well.
I think for the notion of, architects, we don't design buildings. What we have been doing is the representation of buildings, right? Like the medium of this sort of representation. And then with the whole digital development in the past 15 years or 20 years since the Paperless Studio, we have the opportunity to work on both digital and analog. I think from today's symposium, what we saw is how people are tackling this interface or this medium from different perspectives. And I also think the outcome is super interesting because at certain moments, we can see how those things are starting to contaminate architecture. They open up new perspectives for us to think about, for example, how architecture can be seen from the point cloud, right? How this is a completely new way for us to see the building because the points, they're already containing very much more information than what we had with the points before. So I think with the different technologies, with different influence from VR and AR and robotics, all kind of being into the representation. And that's how we can start to redefine architecture or think about how these can reflect back to the discipline in a certain way.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of identifying people as architect or not, I feel like the profession of architecture, no, I mean the profession, the career of architect seems to be very conservative because I don't know how this holds in somewhere else, but in the States, if you call yourself an architect without actually holding a license, there might be some legal problem coming to you. So I feel like I have a bunch of friends, they just label themselves as architect on LinkedIn, and several days later, the local board of jurisdiction just write them letters asking them to take down the title within 5 days, something like that. So I feel like the whole profession seems to be very conservative in terms of broadening the concept of architect. But I'm really appreciate that. I'm really impressed to see that everyone, well, at least in this board, has a diverse range of approach of making things, of expressing your opinion. So I think that's very impressive.
Excuse me, but before we move on, I think Philip has a few things to say. So he's, I mean, an accomplished architect in his own right. So Philip.
Okay, thank you, Gustavo. Can you hear me? Yes. I think it's a great honor to be here tonight, and thanks, Haotian, to invite so many great speakers today. It's really impressive to see different generation. Actually, I think it's a different generation presentation because it's really high quality about your works. Especially, it's really critical to the discipline. And we're talking about the domain of architecture discipline, actually, which is right now, a lot of people criticize on the reality, but don't know how to go further, go to the future. So right now, recently, I invite Newlich to co-author, essay. The name is Material Intelligence and Immaterial Intelligence. I think it's quite similar to Haotian's invitation to all the speakers today. Actually, I want to set up this talk to Neil is similar to make discussion about the future of the discipline. I think the territory is right now challenged by different generations, just like Dima, Ma Qingyun and his son, and Ma Bojian. I think they are two generations. Although Dima is still focused on his vineyard and construct hundreds square meters, about 1 million, half million square meters on his vineyard. That is a quite developer style in what is insists on doing right now. While at the same time, his son Bojian is quite insist on his own lifestyle. That is quite, I think, is on the cyberspace. He's really a pop star and curating and doing something quite differently. So I don't want to criticize on tradition architect or the future architects. I think it's based on how would you like to address your practice and research in the future in your whole life. I think firstly, it's not just about your hobby and whether you like to do something. It's about what kind of lifestyle and how to make living on your skills. So I think no matter you're talking about how cool about your studio work in your university, but right now if you go directly to practice, it should be very importantly to curate your life, your career, rather than just doing some artistic work. So we should be thinking on the discipline, the jobs, and how would you like to set up some new business model or new life model or the office model for the future. So that's the question I want to put forward, especially like Kaiho is right now teaching in Vienna, and Shiji is right now set up his own business, his own office as an architect. And while at the same time, I think some of the young generation actually are doing some really impressive works, like to doing some like narrative, dynamic, creative works in the meta space, meta universe. I think it's quite amazing. But my question goes to whether would you like to buy a new car, or would you like to design a new car, or whether you want to create a wheel or the engine of the new car. So that means if the future is the matter universe is a new future, what kind of the framework, what kind of the business model, what kind of initial social framework do you think that is necessary to be talked or to be discussed from the perspective of the architect, rather than just find a job to do some artistic work? I think the social process is more meaningful. So my question goes to what would you like to address your research and your artistic work to the future of the social process?
Just while people are waiting to reply, can I just add something to that kind of comment, Philip? That is, let's say, I mean, Dima becoming a winemaker is actually, that fits into a long kind of culture of kind of hybridity that's already existing. For example, Rem Koolhaas started off as a filmmaker and went into architecture. Meanwhile, Francis Ford Coppola started off as a filmmaker, and a really good filmmaker, and now makes very good wine. So you've got these three individuals, and almost it's like, you know, when you think about it, filmmaking, winemaking, and architecture both involve some kind of coordination between different kind of skills, bringing them all together. So it's almost like the skills are transferable, you know, in a way. And to my mind, the architect is more about a certain sensibility and a way of operating rather than bricks and mortar. It could be films, or it could be winemaking, and so on.
I just wanted to add briefly, Philip's question is a very important question. Because if I think about it, statistically, every generation gets smarter than the previous, because the information and the tools are denser and more powerful. So my question also would be, building on Philip's question, is what is your responsibility and role in your research to evolve culture in a way that you feel that you're getting the most out of life? Because that's also making a living, that's also being happy and helping others at the same time. That seems like a good open question to ask. What do you guys are doing to making a difference?
Well, I have no answer to the questions because I totally feel the same. I mean, in the age of 20s, it is hard to say that any of us has found the right direction to contribute to a bigger context. And of course, that is where the struggle is. And it is oftentimes translated in a very utilitarian way, right? Oftentimes, many of us have just gone through the process of transitioning from a student to, working somewhere. And that is already quite painful. Even to find your position in the existing running machine of this whole world is something extremely difficult for us. If you haven't gone through that, I think we have more or less experienced that in one way or another. So it is a very tough question. So without answering that, I want to ask the question to possibly someone that are further away from architecture, right? Because I wonder what is the way the artist would, like a pure artist would have impact on the world, and I believe there are ways to do that, right? So I wonder if Xiying and other artist friends would love to share some insights on that. Having heard so many stories about architecture, architect struggle, and having a bigger impact and finding a position, like Xiying, you're from somewhere outside of architecture. You don't have that burden, but perhaps you have other struggles. So I'm very curious about your story here.
Yeah, so coming from a product design background, I just feel like industrial design or say product design is kind of similar to architecture, because I feel like we are all building the physical things, like no matter, it's just the scale, it's just a difference in scale, but we are all building something that humans are interacting with. Well, coming from that background, after experimenting more with the digital media, I feel like what I'm doing now is more like to envision the future of the more like entanglement of both, entanglement of how virtual and physical will combined into a new reality, or say post reality. And yeah, I'm just and also one of my kind of interest or my dream to be a cyborg is also what I'm doing now. Why I really enjoy doing those interactive wearable sensory things is because I guess that's one of the approach to physically be a cyborg rather than in the cyberspace. And yeah, I can't really say that how we are evolving from the previous generation, but I feel like we are all just trying to combining all our past experience, our past professions, and into something. I guess we are all exploring something like metaverse. Maybe that's a term that can describe what we are doing.
If I may jump in here, also just to resonate with what you have said, I guess the underlying question in Philip's one is that it is easier if we say we're just individual artists and say and admit that there's a certain limit to our impact on the world. And within that bubble, within that realm, we can do whatever we want. We can be totally free, right? We can create cool stuff, but one day that is particularly the task of architect. We need to translate that into like a collaborative innovation, or we want to use our own effort to motivate a larger group. And that is always a challenge. I don't want, well, since we're used to the term this generation, although I quite doubt that, but I don't want this generation to be a generation who are, you know, escaping into their own little worlds and refuse to have larger impact on the world. But in the meantime, I mean, this is just the start of our profession and or even our education, right? So it takes a long way, I think, for us to find really a position. So in this case, maybe like Neil or Philip, if you, I believe the same struggle may have happened to you when you are of our age, or when you have just started the practice and your academic life. So I wonder if that also resonates some past experience of you guys.
Yeah, can I just say something? Is, I mean, I was struck by the term escaping, because I don't see you guys escaping, but doing the opposite. You know, to say, well, I mean, you're not escaping to your own world. You're actually opening up a new domain for other people. You know, when I was at your stage at the University of Nottingham, which is kind of a curious place to start. But anyway, I remember I was asked by the RIBA, it's a really stuffy organization, right? And they said, how do you define architecture? And I said, well, to my mind, architecture is less about the actual design of physical buildings and more about imagining a better future world. And, you know, to my mind, that still holds true. You know, and what I find particularly interesting, because, you know, there was an example of one of the Digital Futures team, Benaz Farah. He went to work in a cinema school, do a PhD at USC. And she was working in a building that was sponsored by George Lucas. So we're talking about something very futuristic. But what they were amazed by was that she came there and all they could do were things on screens, but she brought with it something else. She could 3D print things. She could imagine things in a bigger space. She understood material behavior and so on. So I think there is a kind of added extra that we get from becoming, you know, from an architectural background, which kind of goes back to some of Philip's kind of interests in kind of the material and the immaterial. But you know, I don't think it. I think it's important to try and see this as opening up new possibilities for what architecture is, because I think architecture is becoming more and more constricted as we go on, because we as architects are losing control of the construction process. Most projects in the United Kingdom are run by developers and the architect is working for the developers. So we're losing ground, but then we should try to sort of colonize, as it were, other territories. And I think that's the important thing. One of the comments that came up in my own research about these things was to say, someone was saying, in the future, this was an interactive designer whose background was architecture. I don't think I want to use the word architect anymore because it's restrictive. You know? But maybe if we take the term and open it up, we can think about a new way of understanding architecture beyond the limitations of our present thing to really celebrate that ability. I don't know what Philip thinks about those things.
Yeah, I think we always make a lot of discussion with Neil about whether we are doing architecture. But I think today, it's not a narrative to what you're doing. I think it's open up a new future, actually give us a new possibility for the future of architecture discipline, new domain of the discipline. I think extremely important, very impressive. I would like to invite all you guys to make a version of Chinese discussion in the future, maybe in Tongji University Forum or here on Digital Futures in Chinese. I think that will be more helpful to help the new generation to be thinking on the architecture discipline. Partly I support his understanding about the architecture is about exploring the new possibility. Architecture is not just like a physical space or design and constructing the space, which is right now more about creating a certain kind of hybrid space. I think someone mentioned is really impressive about the physical and cyberspace, which could be integrated and could be hybrid design in the future. But what I suggest for your generation, I think mostly it's not just about doing. It's not just about create something from artistic way. It's more about collaboration. I think it's about more about opening your mind to the others. I think you need to collaborate with different disciplines. Very importantly, I think it's about how to set up a new game rules. It's not just play the game with others. I think which is about the new platform and new infrastructure and maybe the new common ground. You guys can sharing what you're doing and really influence more people to working together with you, follow your dream. I think that is extremely important. And I think here DigitalFUTURES would like to give you a platform to make promotion for what you're doing. I think which is extremely interesting and extremely impressive and creative. I think I would like to send an invitation to Haotian and Shiji and your generation. I think more discussion will be helpful and to know each other well and also to make new friends. I think more discussion and sharing will be extremely important. Yeah.
I just wanted to add something to both Neil and Philip. It's mostly to say that we all have bodies and we all have minds. So I don't really believe architecture will disappear anytime soon, because we have, you know, our bodies give us all these senses of information. So how does information influence our personalities, ourselves? I think Xiying talked about the idea of entanglement in the metaverse or omniverse. They'll need architects in the metaverse. And how does all this information impact our perceptions of ourselves and our families and societies? So Philip's question is very important. You know, if we are making a transition to this new era of technology, how do we use the history of architecture and computer science and all of these fields to make our own new understanding or vision of the future? And I would love to hear maybe from some of you of like, what are your thoughts about what impact can you make in the fields or new fields that you're creating?
Maybe I can say something about this, because I'm right now running a group like to making an architect and artist metaverse based and based on the game engine. So actually it is very like, how to say, it's very difficult actually. The metaverse actually right now, the metaverse needs 6 base technology to achieve the final stage, like the XR sort of things. But right now even XR is not very like stable. And right now, but right now I'm just trying my best and lead my group to like achieve that goal. Back to the questions, like what kind of new like system or the like product logic to the new stage of right now. It's like the metaverse actually. Some investors told me like that is the metaverse is not our generation things, it's the next generation things. Those children like born after 00, they born with this kind of things with the COVID virus. They just like stay in the home and play game, play metaverse sort of things. So one of the things I can tell is that for architect, not for architect, but also artists, we can't like design the metaverse things, no matter is the image or pictures or a building. We should not base on our feeling and knowledge system. We should like know what kind of people they are accepting. They're accepting the metaverse things, the NFT things. Actually, it's the children right now, not us. The adults, like born after 60s, 70s, even 90s. Actually, we are not care about this. We don't care. We know what kind of reality and physical things, the amazing physical on the earth. We only some of us care about the virtual things. Most of us, the normal people, they don't care about the metaverse. They don't care about the virtual things. But the young child, they care. So maybe from this kind of angle, I want to say like the children, maybe we can, the designer, the architect, maybe the artist, we can design something for the children and use this kind of perspective to like step into the metaverse design next generation things. Yeah. That's the one thing I can say about this question, because this is a very big question. It's like new industry, the metaverse is new industry. Yeah.
I think the conclusion, if we have one here, is to embrace the uncertainties, because the world is changing at a very fast speed, and I agree with all of the comments by far, and particularly I think it's healthy, or it's good to think about architect not as the only profession, but also just a set of skills that allow us to tackle different things, right? As Neil suggested, maybe we can use the last few minutes at least to share the personal websites and their Instagrams of the presenters today, so that the audiences can take a closer look at their work and understand their research pursuits. Right? If that's okay, I'm gonna share the screen right now. We have pulled together all of the website information, and you guys are welcome to correct it if it's wrong. Oops, sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to say it has been a pleasure being here today, and actually being humbled by all the talent that I see, all the curators, media artists, and architects. I mean, I'm third generation in the lineage of architecture, but I'm doing a lot of research in the sciences and the media arts. So I appreciate this new seed of a universe that's happening. So I thank you all.
I want to second that. I think it is a seed. I mean, I just imagined that something amazing was being planted somewhere, but now we're seeing this seed turn into something very special. And now that you guys are also teaching elsewhere, you're sowing new seeds. So I think it's incredibly interesting, because we haven't seen the product of all this this educational industry. I mean, the number of students from China coming across, it was obvious that something was going to happen, but for some reason, actually, I think in China it wasn't so well known. I don't think Philip realized quite what was happening, but now we've seen it. And I think we're coming to the end of a session, but I don't think this is the end of the session at all. I think it's the beginning of something else, and I'm very glad that Philip will be setting something up in Chinese as well, because it shouldn't be about English, right? It should be about spreading the word in all sorts of different languages. And hopefully, I would love to see a book or an issue of a journal coming out precisely on this kind of question, because there's something new on the horizon that is it's really invigorating or reinvigorating architecture in an amazing new way. I just want to finish with one kind of comment. That is that I was thinking of going to study at Liverpool before. Actually, I went to Cambridge instead, but because that's where James Stirling had been. But actually, Liverpool had somehow fallen asleep. But now I've seen something amazing coming out of a Liverpool graduate, and I'm seeing some incredible possibilities here. But all of you are doing something in an amazing new way. So I just hope you can keep going, because I think architecture really needs you. It absolutely needs you. So thank you for this amazing presentation. It was a really serious presentations. I don't know whether Philip wants to sort of kind of like add something to all this.
Thank you to all of you. It's a great session tonight, and I'm quite impressive and proud of your work, especially all the Chinese new generation gave us a future dream. You should be the future. I think we will invite you coming back in a Chinese version recently, and hopefully Haotian could help us to reorganize another version. That would be extremely appreciate for your support. So thank you to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you for the kind comments. It's a pleasure, and I believe it's a pleasure shared by everyone if we can have the chance to further continue our discussion. What I see here is just the formation of the new community. In my own educational experiences, Chinese students are that hidden group in many schools, and we compose the majority of oftentimes the majority of architecture students, but there hasn't been a chance for us to hear our voices, not to say to have the world hear our voices. I think today is an amazing start. In my own case, I got to learn a lot of new stuff just by looking at what my colleagues are doing, which are super inspiring. And let's keep this community built. It requires consistent effort, and we would totally appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wonder if any presenters, any colleagues,
Yeah,
want to ask.
let's hear from the presenters. I mean, I'm assuming that everyone has learned as much as I have today from other people, but let's hear from just maybe some finishing comments from each of the presenters, just to kind of a quick comment.
Don't be shy. Just Ava, what do you have to say? Come on, don't be shy.
Right. I just okay. What's pop up in my mind is just a quote that I read like 5 years ago by Mark Wigley. He said like architectural agitators must be disloyal to their disciplinary norms, and architecture can only shake us when it takes the risk of not being called architecture. So I think this is really inspirational because I mean, we're not really being told what architecture should look like, or other like outside the institute or like the industry. So I mean, I'm really looking forward to the future and how this could draw like a parallel upon like what the architecture and the industry is now. So yes, that's what I'm gonna conclude for now.
Yeah, I think one comment I have is I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a look at someone else's work because I'm currently working for a local firm. So to be very honest, I don't have much energy in terms of doing my research. So I think it's really a great opportunity for me to get back to this kind of stuff and sort of rethinking how should I contribute to the future. So I think it's been a great event, and thank you everyone for putting this session together.
Xiying or Jiacheng, do you guys want to say something?
Hello. So for me, as so I'm not working as an architect anymore, and my work is pretty much have no relationship with architecture. But I sort of feel that from the way, from the experience of study architecture, sort of tells me how to, have a kind of logical way of design thinking. But meanwhile, I feel that when you really go to work in a big company, there are just a lot of other things that you need to think about, and how to transform sort of very complicated word or thinking into, just something that's easy. For example, architecture people would say what virtual and reality, like combine them or blur the boundary, but actually it might means just adding a new feature in the application. So I feel like sometimes maybe architecture people can learn, can be a little bit more, speaking some human language. I mean, human language, like, something that's maybe easier to understand, or, not too many things from like up in the sky. So yeah, so I'm learning, or maybe I'm not. I'm kind of just already like that. So maybe that's why I'm leaving architecture. I don't want to like, just keep leaving the word. That's, yeah, I want to do practical things and looking at my project. That's, being online, being updated. Yeah. That's it. That's my perspective. Yeah.
I can be the one to share the feeling about this, what she just said, because I'm also in a very like industrial game company. I can also feel the feeling, like the human language sort of things. Like, but I just want to say, I still want to call myself as an architect, no matter my title or something. But I'd like to make a manifesto about this. Like, I think the architecture education, especially in China, so we should like accept new things, like what I just said in the comments. We should accept a new system rather than a new tool, new theory. It's a new system changing things. So I think if we like start changing things from the base element, like the education, so we can start to, like the people like us, we can like start to helping the education and let the new architects start to speak like human language sort of things. They can, yeah, they can. We should do that. We should do that. It's all like our generation's duty to help the no matter it's architecture or architect or sort of design discipline. We should do that. Like start from the education, like the Haotian, Tianying, they're like teaching the undergraduate, right? I used to be one member of the University of Hong Kong. I as a research assistant and teaching assistant. I also know like if we can like teaching them since the very beginning, so they know this, that they won't like they won't meet the situation what we have now, what the most of architects have now. Yeah, that's what I want to say about this. The comment, our title, our name is like digital future, right? It's about future, not about current situation. It's about future. So yes, that's what we should do. Yeah.
Yeah. Following Peng, I think a minor correction is that it's a plural form, which is futures. So there are different futures. I think that's the point, which especially from the comments from Jiacheng, I'm actually very touched and also very kind of surprised or shocked, because previously we were students. We, of course, were still quite freshly graduated. And I feel that as a student, at least me, I feel that architecture is such a heavy discipline to discuss. But right now, as we're keep working and keep pursuing our own personal kind of approach to architecture, I think we're still doing architecture in general. We're trying to tackle some issues surrounding architecture. There's actually no such a truth, like one simple truth in architecture. This is, however, like right now we're teachers. When we are teaching students, that's partially our struggle, because for students, especially for us, for teachers, it's actually quite a struggle to help learn architecture. We are also learning architecture at the same time. I think today's sharing for me is like, it expands much more possibilities. You see a wide range from more architectural, let's say, and from the or further away from architecture, more artistic approach. But I think the point is that it's a plural form. That's how we approach. I don't know, it's a random thought.
Yeah,
I also have some thought.
Liu Xing,
yeah, you can
go for it. Okay. So Tianying. Oh yeah. So since I'm not working in architecture field anymore, and all my colleagues are like from different fields, they might do visual design or interaction design. So when I told them I study architecture, they're kind of just, they would ask me questions like, I should meet you earlier. So when I decorate, 装修怎么说? When I decorate my house, I can get, like I know like which material I should choose, or which color scheme I should choose, or like what furniture or what style. That's what architecture leaves to like people in other fields. But why when I'm talking to like other architecture students, or while I'm at school, we're just thinking about something that's what maybe other people won't think about at all. So maybe in the future there would be some new way or new technology that's for everybody that can understand, or they're easy to reach, or they can easy to get or touch, that they can just something that's easier to understand, and just more to the people without people not in this industry.
Yeah, I totally agree with Chen, and I think this session is quite mind-provoking. The great point of this one is that we are redefining the role of architect. I think learning architecture doesn't mean we need to be certain profession, but it's more about the critical and the creative thinking. I think with the development of technologies in the future, architecture should design all layers of realities instead of only the physical structure like now. And the physical architecture will act as the infrastructure to support other layers of realities created by either pixels or lights or other intangible materials. So in the future, I think the definition of the metaverse will also be changed. The definition of metaverse will not be limited into just the virtual world, because we are actually physically living in the real world. So the metaverse will be the whole of both physical tangible world and the intangible virtual worlds. Yes, I think we should have more this kind of like presentation to spread our practice and ideas.
Yeah, I think just based on today's conversation, I also have some wishful thinking like in the future. I think for us, there's a very special identity of coming from the East and being educated or practiced in the West. I think the East-West exchange has much more to discuss and then to reflect. Like, for example, when Jiacheng showed the movie about like the Qing dynasty way of storytelling in comparison to AR, like how this sort of storytelling is working with the Hollywood mode. Or like for myself, I work with robots, and there's already a huge amount of practice and application of personal robots in China, and how we can use different way to think about how the robots can really be interpreted in a different environment, or try to put the Western way of spatial organization into the thinking of applying those robots. I think we are standing in a very special kind of edge. And then I think in the future, it will be very helpful for us to organize more events to further push the boundary and develop the conversation.
Perhaps we should wrap things up now. I just wanted to finish, maybe we won't finish, but with a comment that I think it is actually a two-way exchange. I mean, I think that this is what Dean Marvel kept on saying. It's not just kind of, Chinese people going outside China, coming back. It's actually what's happening is we're getting we're getting this kind of cross-pollinization. And it's not just simply that Yan Sung Ma is now designing buildings in the States and so on, but actually we're seeing the fruit of that. I would also just want to suggest that you were saying, oh, we're no longer students. I actually think we're always already students. I think as educators, one has to be open and alert to a lot of things. And one memory I have of teaching at the AA years ago was that the Ren Koolhaas would often turn up to the lectures. You would see him at the back of the lectures. And I think that's what makes a really good architect, being open to new ideas continually. So I would say that we are always already students. We never leave that behind, at least the good architects. Philip, do you want to say a final word or before we go?
Good night.
Yeah, maybe it's time for us to call it a day. Over here is already the start of a new day. And,
exactly.
Yes.
That's a great point to finish on. This is the start of a new day. I really see the start of a new horizon here. And what I really want to do is to try and think of ways in which we can just spread this word even more, because even you guys didn't even know what you were all doing collectively. Now, it's important to tell the world what's happening, because I think Chinese students are too modest, right? And to let this the message get out there. So I'm hoping that Philip and I will be able to work on something. Certainly, it'd be great to see this disseminated more in Chinese around China and around the world as well. So I just want to thank you all. It was really an incredible shock of the best kind today. So really, it was. I feel energized. So thank you so much, and thank you, Haotian, for bringing it together, curating this. Let's hope that it's a discussion that carries on into the future.
Thank you. It's a collaborative contribution.
Exactly.
It's a contribution of all of us. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, team, as well, for supporting all this. Thank you.
Thanks.